My sister-in-law humiliated me at her bachelorette party, made me sleep on the floor after 4 years of abuse. But when the truth exploded, her entire family abandoned her and now she's alone. I'm 32 years old. I'm married to the love of my life, and until a few months ago, I thought I could endure anything to keep the family peace. But it turns out everyone has a limit, and I reached mine in the most humiliating way possible at a spa resort, 6 hours from home, when my sister-in-law told me I had to sleep on the floor. Yes, you read that right. On the floor. Like I was a dog or something. And that was after she invited me herself to her bachelorette party, saying she wanted to apologize and fix things between us. But let me start from the beginning because this story is long and I need you to understand all the context so you can see why it exploded the way it did. I met Natalie, my sister-in-law, like 4 years ago, when David and I had only been dating for 6 months. He had told me about his family, said he had a younger sister who was in college, and I was nervous but excited to meet them all. You know, because things with David were getting really serious and I wanted them to like me. The first time I went to my in-laws' house for a family dinner, Natalie arrived late, like an hour late, and when she walked into the living room where we all were, she looked directly at me, smiled in that super fake way, and said, "Oh, hi, I don't think we've met before," as if she didn't know who I was. David had literally just introduced me 5 minutes before she came in. I mean, she had arrived when I was already there, but whatever. I thought maybe she hadn't heard or something. I stood up to greet her again and she looked me up and down, took like 5 full seconds to shake my hand, and then said in a super sweet voice but with completely cold eyes, "I love your makeup. It's very bold. I would never have the courage to go out like that." And the thing is, I was barely wearing any makeup that day, just a little mascara and lip gloss. But everyone laughed like it had been a funny comment and continued with the conversation while I just stood there feeling like an idiot. That was just the beginning, honestly. And for the next 2 years, every time I saw Natalie, it was the same thing. Comments about my clothes, about my hair, about my weight, about my job, about basically anything she could think of. Always with that sweet little voice and that perfect smile. Always in a way that if I said something, I would look like the crazy sensitive one who can't take a joke. One day she told me, "Oh, Rebecca, are you eating enough? You look very thin. You should take better care of yourself." And literally 2 weeks later she told me, "Wow, looks like you've been really enjoying food lately." Right? She always found a way to make me feel bad without anyone else noticing. Or if they noticed, they simply didn't care, because Natalie was the pretty girl of the family, the baby, the one who could get away with everything. And the worst part is that when I tried to talk to David about this, at first he didn't get it. He would tell me that Natalie had always been like that it was just her personality, that she didn't mean it in a bad way. But one day, after a particularly horrible family lunch where Natalie spent the whole afternoon making comments about how my career wasn't as impressive as hers, she was studying law, I work in human resources, David finally realized. We were in the car going back home, and I was quiet, not crying or making drama, just quiet and tired. And he asked me what was wrong. I told him the truth, that I was exhausted from his sister treating me like trash every time we saw each other. And that's when David explained something to me that I didn't know. Natalie had always been a mean girl since high school, with all the women in the family, with her cousins, with her cousins' friends, with basically any woman who entered her radar. His mom, Karen, who had always seemed super sweet to me, basically let her do whatever she wanted because Natalie was her only daughter and she had raised her like a princess. David told me. He had distanced himself a lot from his family during college precisely because of this, because he was tired of seeing how Natalie treated people and how his parents did nothing about it. After that conversation, I decided the best strategy was simply to ignore Natalie completely. Not respond when she made passive-aggressive comments, not laugh at her bad jokes, basically act like she didn't exist. And it worked. Seriously. For like a year, family gatherings were much more bearable because I simply didn't give her the power to affect me. Natalie noticed, obviously, because several times she tried to get my attention with increasingly obvious comments, but I would just smile and change the subject or walk away. David was proud of me. He told me I was handling the situation very maturely, and I thought I had finally found the solution. But then, like 6 months before everything exploded, Natalie got engaged. Her boyfriend, I don't remember his name because honestly I never paid attention, proposed to her at a family dinner and everyone acted like it was the event of the century. Karen cried, David's dad opened champagne. It was a whole production. I congratulated Natalie politely and stayed in the background, but a few weeks later I received a text message from her, which was weird because we basically never communicated directly. The message said something like, "Hey Rebecca, I know things between us have been a bit tense, but you're my brother's wife, and that makes you part of my family. I would love for you to come to my bachelorette party. It'll be a weekend at an amazing spa resort. All my friends are going. It would be a good opportunity for us to get to know each other better and leave any misunderstanding behind." I showed David the message and he immediately told me not to go, that it was a trap, that Natalie doesn't change just like that. But I, like an idiot, thought maybe she was being sincere. I mean, she was getting married, starting a new stage of her life. Maybe she really wanted to fix things before the wedding. I replied yes, that I would love to go. And she responded with like 1,000 heart emojis and happy faces telling me she was super excited. She gave me all the details. The spa resort was like 6 hours away by car. We were going to spend 2 nights there. She had already reserved everything. I just had to bring comfortable clothes and money for any additional treatments I wanted. I asked her about the accommodation and she told me not to worry, that everything was covered, that we would share rooms among everyone to make it more fun and like a sleepover. The day of the trip came and I was genuinely excited, or at least trying to be. David dropped me off early in the morning at the meeting point, which was Karen's house, where Natalie and her friends were going to pick me up. When I arrived, they were all already there. Natalie, 2 girls I later learned were named Victoria and Alexis, and who apparently were her best friends since high school, and another girl who was someone's cousin, but who went in another car. Natalie greeted me with a super effusive hug, introduced me to her friends as my wonderful sister-in-law Rebecca, and they all smiled in that way that I now know was completely fake. We got in the car, Natalie driving, Victoria in the passenger seat, Alexis and I in the back, and we started the trip. The first 2 hours of the drive were weird, but not terrible. Natalie, Victoria, and Alexis talked among themselves about people I didn't know. Work, gossip, wedding plans, stuff like that. I tried to join the conversation from time to time, but it was obvious they weren't really including me. Every time I said something, they would kind of nod and then continue talking as if I hadn't said anything. I thought, well, maybe it's normal. They're lifelong friends. It's hard to integrate into a group like that. But after like 3 hours, it was clear it was intentional. At one point, Victoria mentioned something about a restaurant, and I said, "Oh, I know that place. The food is amazing." And all 3 ignored me completely, literally as if I hadn't opened my mouth. And Victoria continued talking about something totally different. I tried like 3 more times to join the conversation, and it was the same thing. Eventually, I stayed quiet the last 3 hours of the trip, while they laughed and talked and basically acted like I wasn't there. We arrived at the spa resort around 6 in the evening, and the place was beautiful. I'm not going to lie. Very luxurious, with gardens and fountains and everything decorated super elegant. Natalie checked in while we waited in the lobby with the luggage, and when she came back, she gave us the room keys. Turns out she had reserved 2 rooms, one for Victoria and Alexis, and another for herself. I asked her which was my room, and she looked at me kind of confused and said, "Oh, Rebecca." I thought David had explained. I could only reserve 2 rooms, because the suites are super expensive. But don't worry, you can stay in my room. There's a super comfortable sofa, or you can sleep on the floor. I brought extra blankets. She said it like that, super casual, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I froze. Literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. Victoria and Alexis laughed like it was a joke, and Natalie added, "It'll be fun, like when we were kids and had sleepovers, right?" We went up to the rooms, and when we entered Natalie's, I saw it was a huge suite with a king-size bed, an incredible private bathroom, and yes, a sofa. But it wasn't a sofa bed or anything special. It was literally a decorative 2-seater sofa. Natalie threw her suitcase on the bed, stretched, and said, "Well, girls, see you in an hour for dinner. I'm going to take a bath." And she went into the bathroom, leaving me standing there in the middle of the room with my suitcase in hand. I tried to process it. I tried to think rationally. I tried not to make drama. But something in my brain just clicked. It had been 4 years of horrible comments, 4 years of being treated like trash, 4 years of enduring because I didn't want to cause problems in David's family, and she had brought me all the way here, 6 hours from home, just to humiliate me in front of her friends. I realized she had never wanted to fix anything, that it had all been part of her sick game of making me feel small and insignificant. I waited for Natalie to be in the shower, took the car keys from the nightstand where she had left them, grabbed my suitcase, and left. I went down to the lobby, returned my key to the receptionist, saying a family emergency had come up, got in the car, and started driving back home. It was almost 7 in the evening by that time, so I was going to get home around 1 in the morning, but I didn't care. I drove the full 6 hours alone, in silence, with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they hurt, and all I could think was that I couldn't believe I had let myself be humiliated like that. I got home around 1:30 in the morning and David was awake waiting for me in the living room. When he saw me come in, he got up from the couch and asked me what had happened, and I couldn't hold it anymore. I broke down right there and told him everything. David got furious in a way I had never seen him. He grabbed his phone, called Natalie, and when she answered, he guessed she had already realized I had left with the car. David yelled at her for like 10 minutes nonstop. He told her she was a spoiled and cruel child, that she had crossed all boundaries. How dare she treat his wife like that? Natalie tried to defend herself, saying I was exaggerating, that it was just a joke, that she didn't think I was going to take it so badly. David told her he wasn't going to her wedding, that he didn't want to see her again, and hung up. I thought that was going to be the end of everything, but obviously I was wrong, because that's when things got really crazy. The next day, around 9 in the morning, my phone started ringing nonstop. Natalie, Victoria, Alexis, all calling me and sending me messages saying I had to convince David to go to the wedding, that I was being dramatic, that I was ruining the most important day of Natalie's life. The messages were ridiculous. Literally, Victoria wrote me something like, "You can't be so selfish. This isn't about you. It's about Natalie and her special day. And you're ruining it by being sensitive." I blocked all three, but then Karen, my mother-in-law, started calling. She called me crying, saying to please talk to David, that he couldn't miss his sister's wedding, that families have to forgive each other and be united in important moments. I explained what had happened, told her exactly how Natalie had treated me and about sleeping on the floor, and Karen was quiet for a moment and then said, "Well, Rebecca, I understand your feelings are hurt, but Natalie is my daughter, and she's getting married. Can't you just let it go this once?" David heard that conversation on speakerphone, and when his mom said that, he took the phone from me and told her we weren't going to let anything go, that Natalie needed to learn that her actions had consequences. Karen started crying harder and saying David was being cruel. How could he do this to his sister? And David just hung up. That night, around 11 at night, David put on his shoes and told me he was going to his parents' house. I asked if he wanted me to go with him, but he said no, that this was something he had to do alone. He left and didn't come back until 3 in the morning. When he returned, he told me he had a horrible fight with his mom. Karen had told him that if he didn't go to the wedding, she was going to make sure the whole family stopped talking to him, that she was going to cut him off from the family completely. David responded that she could do whatever she wanted, that he wasn't going to tolerate his sister abusing his wife, and left the house with Karen yelling at him from the door. I thought after that they would leave us alone. But no. 2 days later, around 6 in the morning on a work day, someone knocked on our door like crazy. David and I were just waking up. He had to be at the office at 8, and when we opened the door, there were Karen and Natalie standing there. Natalie's eyes were red like she had been crying all night, and Karen looked exhausted. They demanded to come in to talk to David, and I told them it wasn't a good time, that we had to go to work. Karen completely ignored me and tried to come in. And I don't know what happened to me at that moment, but something in me just broke. I yelled at them. I yelled at them in a way I had never yelled at anyone in my life. I told them that Natalie was an insecure manipulator who needed to make other women feel bad, to feel good about herself. That Karen was a terrible mother who had raised a horrible person by never setting boundaries. That I was fed up with both of them and their toxic family circus. I told Natalie she was a liar. That I knew all the comments she had made to me for years were intentional. That the Bachelorette party thing had been the final act of a cruel and pathetic person. Karen tried to interrupt me, and I told her to shut up. That she had had 4 years to be a good mother-in-law and had failed miserably every time she chose her daughter over doing the right thing. I told them to get out of my house and never come back. That if I saw their car on my street again, I was going to call the police. They stood there in total shock because obviously they never expected me to react like that. I had always been the quiet one, the one who endured everything without saying anything. And suddenly there I was, yelling at them all the truths I had been keeping. Natalie started crying for real, and Karen hugged her like I was the monster. And they went to their car. Before leaving, Karen yelled at me from the window that I had shown my true self, that now she understood why Natalie didn't like me. I slammed the door and leaned against it, shaking. David hugged me and told me he was proud of me, that I had needed to do that for a long time. The wedding was like a month after all that drama, and, obviously, we didn't go. We blocked Natalie and Karen everywhere and basically acted like they didn't exist. A few days after the wedding, David's aunt, his dad's sister, called us and told us that Natalie had mentioned everything that had happened in her wedding speech. Apparently, she had said something about how not all the family could be present because some people can't handle others being happy, that she had tried to have a good relationship with her sister-in-law, but that I was a dramatic and conflictive person who had made her brother distance himself from the family. Basically, she painted me as the villain of the story and herself as the innocent victim. But here's where everything turned against her. David's aunt, who had always been like neutral in everything, heard the speech and thought something didn't add up. She called us and asked what had really happened. David told her the whole story, from the first comment 4 years ago to the bachelorette party thing. The aunt was silent, and then said that Natalie had always been problematic, but that she had never seen the magnitude of her behavior, because Karen always defended her. In the following weeks, more relatives started contacting us asking for the truth, because Natalie's speech had seemed weird and manipulative to them. We told them our version, without exaggerating anything, just the facts. And it turns out we weren't the only ones with stories about Natalie. David's cousins shared similar experiences from when they were younger, how Natalie had treated them horribly, and Karen had always excused her. One of the uncles mentioned that Natalie had made his daughter cry at her graduation with comments about her weight. Basically, the whole extended family started putting the pieces together and realized the problem had always been Natalie and the way Karen had raised her. Most of the family decided to cut contact with both of them. It wasn't at our request or anything, they just got fed up with years of drama and toxic behavior. Now, almost a year later, David and I live peacefully, without all that stress. His dad visits us sometimes alone, without Karen, which is weird but works. The rest of the family invites us to gatherings and celebrations, and Natalie and Karen are basically isolated. I found out through the grapevine that Natalie is pregnant now, and that supposedly Karen is trying to get the family to forgive her by telling them they're going to be grandparents and should be happy about it. But nobody's paying attention to her. David says he doesn't feel guilty about anything that happened, that we should have done it years ago. Sometimes, I think about everything I endured trying to keep the peace, all the times I swallowed hurtful comments, and I wonder why I did it for so long. I guess I wanted to be the good daughter-in-law, the one who didn't cause problems, but in the end, all I accomplished was allowing myself to be treated like trash. I should have left that bachelorette party from the moment they ignored me in the car, or better yet, I should never have gone. But well, at least now I have peace. And that's worth more than any forced relationship with toxic people.